Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our public policy presentation. Today, we will be discussing the research topic most of us on our team find important, and perhaps you do too. And this is education. During deliberation, we first addressed the numerous problems in higher public education here in the state of California. However, we agree to emphasize on K-12 public education because we understand the great value of K-12 education and how important it is for all Californians to receive it in high standards. Annotative observations led us to focus on this public problem. Our analytics composed a file of information which led us to many questions. We hope that with this information, it will begin a debate for you to ponder on. It is hard to compare California to another state due to its diversity and size. However, I selected the state of Massachusetts because in 2015, it ranked in the higher states compared to the national average score in math, reading, science, and writing at the 8th grade level. At the bottom of this infographic, you can see California is identified by the color green, Massachusetts in blue, and the national average in gray. One of the most important and critical problems within the United States today is low funding towards K-12 education. Funding education is one of the main issues in which students are not allowed to reach their full potential. The state's budget is offering less and less funding for K-12 per person. This can affect not only students, but teachers as well. In a time when states and the nation want to produce efficient workers and students for higher education, the decline in state funding is a concern. Not only does the funding affect the students' performance for K-12, but it also affects the ratio of how many students are able to attend college. Funding can be a problem, especially to those of low-income families, therefore not producing efficient citizens for the country. But wait till you hear this. According to data done in both Merced and Santa Cruz County, where the population is 270,000 in both counties, budget cuts is a big problem in the students' performance. About 44% of the total educational spending in the United States in 2014 came from state funds. Cuts in the state level mean that local school districts have to cut their educational services provided. Local school districts have little ability to replace and recover lost state aid on their own. Many school districts struggle to accumulate the money needed to provide students with the best education. And it might get you wondering, is that how it is all the way across the board? So what is causing this problem? Here we identified 3 possibilities. The formula itself does not look at the amount of fundraising a school can do to receive funding on their own. Most schools in upper class can fundraise more money on their own than one in a lower class. Therefore, they can raise less funding than those in counties that do not have as much, or make a change in a formula where a variable represents the amount of money each county can gain by themselves. Kids are not being prepared to be efficient workers in the job industry. Many fail to be enrolled in college, or many drop out because they're not prepared for the type of education being provided. Because they are not being prepared correctly from K through 12, they either drop out or stop after high school and cannot find a high-paying job, therefore keeping them in the same poverty level. The solution is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Taxpayers have invested considerable resources in the nation's public schools. However, ever-increasing funding of education has not led to similarly improved student performance. Instead of simply increasing funding for public education, federal and state policymakers should implement education reforms designed to improve resources allocated and boost student performances. Granting more independence to school districts while emphasizing them towards evidence-based approaches to allocations could allow for more flexibility in selection of the best ways to improve education. And now we're going to take you to the data. This model was designed to explore the effect that investment of education at lower levels, K through 12, has on the rate of the population with a bachelor's degree in the state of California. Our initial hypothesis predicts that factors related to investment at lower education will have a positive influence on higher education. It is, as preschool enrollment increases per county, the rate of the population with a bachelor's in each corresponding county will increase. Utilizing STATA, we ran multiple recognitions that led us to the conclusion that preschool enrollment rates poses a rather strong impact on the rate of college graduates amongst counties. Our underlying assumption is that those who receive a higher quality of an education at earlier stages in their lives are generally more rationally able and are more inclined to conduct themselves in a manner which would otherwise make higher education a more appealing option. Descriptive statistics, we ran a summary command along with the correlated command. Our data analyst, Jonathan, made a wonderful job with all our data related to this project. So let me take the time to explain this graph for you. Our adjusted R-squared value did not change significantly when trying variation of the model, which all consist of the variables that are significant in our confidence interval, which is 5%. Our p-value for f is less than 0.01, suggesting our regression is significant to the 0.99 level. We have an 0.85 R-squared, suggesting 85% variation of y is explained by our x's. We have three statistically significant coefficients: public school enrollment rates, preschool enrollment rates, and children in food insecure households. These values are significant at the 5% level. Public school enrollment has a negative effect on higher education rates in that a 1% increase in public school enrollment will have a 0.14% decrease in higher education rate. A 1% increase in preschool enrollment rate has a 0.67% increase in higher education rates. A 1% increase in children in food insecure households has a 1.22% decrease in higher education rates. Essentially, for our significant coefficients, children in food insecure households resulted in the strongest effect on our dependent variable. We believe that our model may have displayed heteroscedasticity, being that when we perform a residual plot against higher education rates, our results showed slight patterns in terms of the residuals. Multicollinearity was not seen when we ran regressions that included both free or reduced meals and significant poverty. Although the two variables seem highly related to one another, they did not bring our adjusted R-squared value down. We believe our model does include some unique results in terms of higher education rates. While some of our variables are obvious in nature, the most statistically significant were not. For example, it was interesting to notice conditions at earlier stages in education, such as food security, can have an impact on higher education rates, especially when most people would associate non-academic factors as irrelevant towards higher education. Most interestingly, our initial hypothesis for public school enrollment was positive, but our results yielded a negative relationship to the dependent variable. We can argue that funding in lower education is important in the state of California in order to eliminate the existent negative correlation between public schools and higher education attainment. For the most part, we agree with our findings and could perhaps use even more less intuitive variables in the future substantiate our claim for the importance of funding in lower public education, such as increasing private school enrollment to see if it offers a positive correlation to higher education rates. We gave you some information about another state, but now we will focus more on California and its counties. The next map outlines the different counties in California. For this team's purposes, we have selected two similar counties, Santa Cruz and Merced County, and by similar we refer to the size of population. This map was created on GIS and it features California's counties. It also features public schools in the Merced and Santa Cruz counties. Due to Merced having a larger boundary, the public schools in that district are more dispersed, as opposed to Santa Cruz where the schools are clustered. This is a map of California high school dropout rates in the counties for the year of 2015. Merced and Santa Cruz school districts both share the same percentage of 2.3% dropout rate. This infers that the state funding towards high school education is not a significant factor in dropout rates for those two schools. All state legislation begins as an idea. A legislator with that idea then sends it to the Legislative Council to be written into a draft of a bill, which would then be introduced to either the Assembly or the Senate, depending on the house the legislator is from. There, it will be read, then sent to the Office of State Printing to be made into a new draft. It will then be sent to the Rules Committee, where it would be sent to the appropriate policy committee for hearings. If it gets past the committee, it will then be brought back to the legislative floor for 2 more readings and finally having the vote. If the bill passes, the entire process will then happen in the other legislative house. If the second house puts amendments in the bill, the original house will have to accept or not accept the amendments, and the conference committee of both houses meet together to figure out what will stay or not. Then the bill returns for a final vote, and if it passes, it is then sent to the governor to either be signed into law or vetoed. If it is vetoed, the legislature can override it by a 2/3 vote from both houses. Once it is law, it is put into the California codes. This graph shows a comparison of percentages of Santa Cruz County and Merced County dropout rates and their college enrollment rate. The purpose of this graph is to show a side-by-side comparison of the counties. Point of reflection, we notice that solving an issue, especially about education, is not as simple. It's very complex and very important. And according to our policy analyst, it can be quite tedious, especially when trying to find the right legal writing. Overall, everyone's job would have been a little bit more easier if we had more time to discuss and properly plan out what we wanted to address. On behalf of the whole team, we'd like to thank you, and now we will gladly be taking your questions.